rebels want to do things in an unconventional way. And so also the thing about informed fitness that appeals to rebels is like, oh, everybody else is on the treadmill for 90 minutes and like they're pedaling away and doing the Stairmaster and like we know the secret way. We figured it out. Like we're doing it this unconventional way and everybody tells you have to do this and we're telling you, no, you don't. You don't have to listen to all of them because we know the secret arcane way to fitness and even your doctor doesn't even, your doctor's orders, they don't know what they're talking about. We figured it out.
Hey, Informed Nation, that was best-selling author and award-winning podcaster Gretchen Rubin, who is our guest for the next 2 episodes here on the Informed Fitness Podcast. 20 minutes with New York Times best-selling author Adam Zuckerman and friends. Thanks again for joining us. I'm Tim Edwards, the founder of the Inbound Podcasting Network and a client of Informed Fitness. Now, in just a minute, the founder of Informed Fitness himself, Adam Zuckerman, will be joined by Sheila Melody, who is the co-owner of the Informed Fitness in Toluca Lake, California, Mike Rogers, the general manager of Informed Fitness in New York City, and of course, our guest, Gretchen Rubin. Gretchen has a very popular weekly podcast titled Happier with Gretchen Rubin, where she discusses good habits and happiness with her sister Elizabeth Kraft. Her podcast was named in iTunes lists of Best Podcasts of 2015 and was also named in the Academy of Podcasters Best Podcasts of 2016. So we're delighted to have her today. Gretchen Rubin is also the author of several books, including the blockbuster New York Times bestsellers Better Than Before, The Happiness Project, Happier at Home, and her forthcoming book to be released later this summer titled The Four Tendencies. Learn how to understand yourself better and also how to influence others more effectively. Now, here in this episode, we will be discussing what those 4 tendencies are, how you can find out what your tendencies are, and how those tendencies might affect how clients of Informed Fitness could approach their workout. And this is pretty cool. Gretchen Rubin has been interviewed by Oprah, eaten dinner with Nobel Prize winner Daniel Kahneman, and has actually walked arm in arm with the Dalai Lama. And now is interviewed by Adam Zuckerman. Looks like Adam's in good company. Let's get to it. Here is Gretchen Rubin on the Informed Fitness Podcast.
Gretchen, thank you so much for coming on our show. It's been a long time coming. And so, Mike, since you're the one who's working with Gretchen all these years, why don't you introduce her a little bit?
Okay, well, I just looked through our database and I just found out that she's on her 498th session.
Wow.
In 12 years, 11 years, I think 2005, so almost 12 years.
Gosh.
She is by far our biggest referrer. She's consistent, except when she's on her book tour and we're on vacation or something like that. But it's been such a pleasure to have Gretchen as a client here. She's become a great friend. Her husband works out here, her father-in-law, her mother-in-law, her children. So we're very, very grateful to have you as a client and a friend and to have you on the podcast as well. It's such a pleasure to see her every week because first of all, she is very easy to train because she's always on time. She works very, very hard. She follows directions. She really goes.
That's because she's an upholder.
Yeah,
right?
exactly. A classic upholder, which we'll talk about later. In the time, the 30 minutes we have together, we are really able to get out the very intense workout. I always look forward to it because we have the most engaging conversations about sugar and fitness and psychology, and I look forward to it all the time. It really doesn't feel like work to me. I just wanted to welcome you to the podcast, and it's so great to have you here.
That was very sweet.
It's so fun to be here. And I was thinking as I was walking here, I was like, it's so fun to be coming and getting to talk to you without actually having to work out.
I thought you enjoyed it.
Yeah, well, I enjoy the talking part. I don't enjoy the weightlifting part is less enjoyable than your conversation.
Right.
But it's not terrible.
Thank you.
It's fine. By the time I'm ready for it to be over, it's over. And that is the great
there you
advantage
go.
of Informed Fitness.
I did some quick math, by the way, and 12 years, 498 workouts in 12 years, that's 41 workouts a year. So that is as consistent as it can get.
Oh, that's great.
It's fantastic.
So think about that, 41, that's 20 hours of work.
That's it.
That's 20 hours a year of working out.
That is the thing that whenever I am trying to sell Informed Fitness on people, I always say it's 20 minutes. Like, do you have 20 minutes a week? And there's no music, no mirror, no sweating, no waiting. And like, it's,
Now the 20.
it's not going to get better than that.
Yeah.
Like, you're not going to find something that you're going to like better than that.
Gretchen, you were one of the first people that we talked about we wanted to have on this show because Sheila's been listening to your podcast for quite some time. And of course, with your relationship there
time.
at Inform Fitness the whole time.
Yes.
And it ties in nicely with what you're doing. But if you could, before we dive into your workout, tell us about what you do and what led you to Inform Fitness.
Well, I'm a writer principally, but I've written books about happiness and good habits and human nature. So I'm probably best known for my book, The Happiness Project. And I have a podcast called Happier that I do with my sister, Liz Kraft. And I found out about Inform Fitness because basically a friend told me. She was describing her workouts to me, and I thought, this is fantastic. I had been reading a lot of research about why people were increasingly thinking that high-intensity workouts were more effective than kind of, because I always thought it was like, you're supposed to do like 3 sets of 12 repetitions at a medium weight, and this was like, no, that's not the way to really like work out efficiently. So I was intrigued by it. And then, one of my favorite sayings is a Zen saying that when the student is ready, the teacher will appear. And it was like, I was out to lunch with this friend and she was describing her workout to me and I'm like, bang, I'm in. Like, where is this place? And I found out it's a long walk, but it's actually a walk from my apartment. So that's part of my exercise is to walk here. It was exactly what I was looking for because I had become so convinced about the logic and the research behind high intensity workouts.
All right. Now, Sheila, when you and I very first met, we were talking about podcasting. You brought up Gretchen because you've been listening, like you said, since the beginning.
Well, first of all, Gretchen, I just want to say I am a huge fan, but I also want to thank you for being you're so open. You're on your, you reveal a lot about yourself. It's a courageous thing, in my opinion. You reveal a lot about yourself and your personal life and everything, and it helps people. Whenever I read your books, I start to get all like, oh my gosh, this is so, there's a guidelines to getting to know yourself and how do you do that and how is that going to then lead to good habits or changing your habits or making your life better or happier. So,
well, that's so nice to hear. Thank you.
Yes, thank you so much. And yeah, I just wanted to say that. Thank you so much for being courageous about revealing a lot of yourself in all your work.
Well, it's powerful. It's powerful to hear somebody talk that way.
Well,
so honestly.
I think what it is that sometimes people, you can read about a study or you can read great advice and you think, you're sort of nodding your head and you think, yeah, like that seems right. That seems true. But when you read how somebody else has sort of put it into their own life, how they put it into action, sometimes then it's easier to imagine how you would put it into your life. Maybe you would do something differently, but you can sort of imagine how to concretely apply it more easily because you don't have to make that jump from sort of the theoretical to the practical. Because I'm all about like, how do you actually do something tomorrow morning? Like,
exactly.
Not, because we can all read stuff that sounds great, but then what do people actually do differently? And that's what's hard. So I think sometimes just an example is helpful with people.
That's what's
So
great.
let's talk about the book. The name of the book is called Better Than Before.
Yeah. So I've been writing about happiness, and I found that when people were talking about a happiness challenge they face, a lot of times it was a problem with a habit. Like, I'm exhausted all the time because I'm in the habit of not going to bed on time. So Better Than Before was an attempt to try to help people understand how to change their habits. Like, how do you actually change a habit? And what I found is there are actually 21 strategies that people can use to make or break their habits. And 21 sounds like a lot. But the fact is, some of these strategies work for some people and not for other people. And some strategies are available to us at some times in our lives and not at other times in our lives. So it's good that there's so many because you can really pick and choose the ones that are going to work for you. Because some absolutely do not work for some people. And this is important because a lot of times when people are trying to help other people change their habits, or when you're trying to change your own habits, you think well, what's the best way? I'm going to start small. I'm going to do it for 30 days. I'm going to give myself a cheat day. I'm going to do it first thing in the morning. And these can work for some people, but they don't work for everybody all the time. And so it's good to know all the options. And so that you can really begin by saying, what is the right thing for you? So I try to really lay out the whole framework so that people can start saying yeah, I remember when I was in college, I did that and that worked really well. Or, oh yeah, I remember, when I tried it that way, didn't work last time, maybe it's not going to work that way. This time, maybe I should try a different way.
And to help figure out which habits are best and will work best for you, you came up with the Four Tendencies.
Yes. Yeah, so I stumbled across this this Four Tendencies framework when I was writing Better Than Before, because I was very struck by these different patterns that I saw in how people could successfully make or break habits or like particular challenges they faced. And actually, my next book is called The Four Tendencies because since I've introduced it, people have just been deluging me with questions about it. So I thought, okay, I'm going to write a book about the Four Tendencies and like figure it all out for myself. So the Four Tendencies, and Mike, you and I have talked about this endlessly because I'm always picking your brain. The Four Tendencies are upholder, questioner, obliger, and rebel. And I argue that everybody is one of these their whole life, in all contexts. And it has to do with how you deal with an expectation. So there are outer expectations like work deadlines or a request from a spouse. And then there are inner expectations like your own desire to keep a New Year's resolution, your own desire to start meditating. So upholders readily meet outer and inner expectations. So they meet the work deadline, they keep the New Year's resolution without that much fuss. Questioners question all expectations. They'll do something if they think it makes sense. So they hate anything arbitrary or inefficient or irrational. Their first question is, why should I listen to you? So essentially, they make everything an inner expectation because if it meets their criteria, they'll do it. And if it doesn't meet their criteria, they will resist it. Then there are obligers. Obligers readily meet outer expectations, but they struggle to meet inner expectations. And I grasped this when a friend of mine said, I don't understand it. I know I would be happier if I exercised. And when I was in high school, I was on the track team, and I never missed track practice. So why can't I go running now? Well, I would say when she had a team and a coach waiting for her, she had no trouble. But when it's just her own desire to run, she struggles. And then there are rebels. Rebels resist all expectations, outer and inner alike. They want to do what they want to do in their own way, in their own time. If you ask or tell them to do something, they're very likely to resist. And they don't even like to tell themselves what to do. So now I know that Mike is a questioner because he has proved this to me over and over and over in my conversations. But I don't know, do you guys know what your tendency is?
Yes, we all took the quiz.
Oh, good. Okay.
Yeah, we all took it.
What are you?
I'm definitely a questioner. I think anyone that knows me also would agree with that.
True.
Yeah.
Immediately.
Yeah.
But I do feel myself kind of in a gray area of rebel. I do find myself being very kind of, because you told me to do it, I'm going to question it, which makes me a questioning rebel. I don't know.
Nobody who creates the power of 10 or develops this type of weight training is not a rebel. A little bit, I think.
Well, I didn't develop it. I kind of popularized it, if anything, which is what we're doing on this podcast. So Sheila, what are you?
Well, I'm an obliger. And, I knew I was an obliger when I first heard the tendencies, but I've taken the test several times. Please let me not be an obliger. Because I reread the chapter just the other day, and I was like, it's so true. As you say, obligers don't really like their tendency because they get kind of tend to get overwhelmed because they're meeting other people's expectations and not their own,
But so I would say this about the obligers. First of all, it's the largest tendency. It's the one that most people belong to. So you're in good company because 40% of the world, men and women, is obliger. They're the ones that pair up the most easily. So they get along with other people the best. And also, I think the advantage of the obliger tendency is that so all of the tendencies have strengths and weaknesses. Mm-hmm. The weakness of the obliger tendency is the easiest to fix. It's the easiest kind of buttress to put in because all they need is outer accountability. If they have outer accountability, they can meet an inner expectation. That's very easy. Mm. The limitations and weaknesses of my tendency, upholder tendency, it's very abstract. Mm-hmm. It's a very kind of abstract, difficult to put your finger on thing to fix. And so it's much harder to offset it. Mm-hmm. Whereas I feel like with obligers, it's just plain as day how to offset it. So I feel like, they have this thing they have to deal with, but it's easy for them to deal with. Whereas like with a questioner or a rebel or an upholder, it's like, it's just trickier. It's trickier to handle the weakness.
But one thing I read, and I'm so excited about this now because I rereading this and thinking that obligers pair up really well with rebels.
Yes.
And so now I'm like,
that's
okay.
to the T for you.
Are you
I need to.
With the rebel?
Well, I'm not, but now I know what to look for. You know what I mean?
She likes the bad boy.
Been, though,
yeah.
So.
Yeah. So I think
your
maybe
friends are rebels.
Yeah. I mean, actually, yes. But as far as a personal relationship, that's what I think I'm going to start looking for now. you know? So
Yeah, when you sit back and think about all the tendencies, I think when you think about the virtues of all of them, to me, actually like the idea of the obliger because I feel like the biggest trait that accompanies that is people pleasing. And I mean, obviously that's sometimes that could be very, very bad sometimes, but I feel like just in the world that we live in, to have that sort of outlook that you want to help other people. I think the fact that we're fitness practitioners, health practitioners, I feel like it's fitting, and sometimes when I realize that I am an obliger, I'm actually, I don't hate that trait because I think I know that I fit into other categories as well, but I don't know. That's what I think.
Well, it's interesting because I've had several people say to me that they wanted only hire obligers. Because they're like, we're a company, like our culture is client first, customer always. And we want people who are going to bring this, like this outer expectation is going to be, is going to be paramount to them. Because the fact is with an upholder, they're kind of like, well, you know what? I got my own problems. Like, I know the client wants to talk to me at 8 p.m. on a Friday, but I've got to be like in my son's recital. And like, he's just going to have to wait. In some places, that works, and in some places they're like, no, we really need you. And now it's not to say that other tendencies can't accommodate that culture because everybody can learn to deal with it. But it's certainly true that for obligers, several people have said to me they think like, oh, in my profession, it's a big advantage to have an obliger outlook.
I think especially if you're a new employee somewhere, because when you're new, you always want to do more, impress more, be more available. And I think like especially when you're starting a job or starting something like that, I think that's what an employer wants to see after they hire you is that you are that type of person.
Or an upholder.
Well, it's interesting because one of the things I should say about the tendencies is this is just one aspect of somebody's personality. So some problems I have with some personality frameworks is they try to explain too much about you. Like you're these 15 things. And I'm like, well, no, I'm not. This is one tiny thing. So we could take 50 questioners and line them up. And they would look very different depending on how ambitious they were, how intellectual they were, how curious they were, how considerate they were, how extroverted they were. And so they would be very different. But in this way, how do they respond to an expectation? They would be the same. Right. And so it doesn't explain everything about you, but it does explain this one thing. And by the way, if somebody doesn't know what they are from this discussion, Sheila, you mentioned the quiz. You can take the quiz at happiercast.com/quiz. It's a short quiz that will tell you what you are. But a lot of times people can just tell what they are from the description.
Can you repeat that again? Where you can find it?
It's happiercast.com/quiz.
I'm going to have all my trainers take the quiz.
Well,
I am, because I want to know, how to, it'll help me to managing them and them relating to their clients.
I think it has huge implications for things like I think a lot about, like if I were, if I were training somebody, what would I think, what would I think about? And I think one of the things that working out this way gives is it does give accountability. Like somebody has an appointment with you, and like I know if I don't show up, it's like I've wasted Mike's time because, I've taken that slot. Now, one thing I've proposed, because to up the accountability.
I know what she's going to say.
Yeah, because I've proposed this before. See what you think. I think a lot of people know, a lot of obligers know they need accountability. I think, if I were you, I would offer people the option to say, if you choose, we will charge you triple if you do not show.
Oh my gosh.
Within a day of canceling. You can choose to opt into that. I would bet some people would choose that.
Wow.
Because they would want to make the accountability greater.
That's hardcore.
And I bet we would never have to do that.
Yeah, I mean,
we'd never have to do it. Yeah.
That's what people would want. Accountability like this is something that is very important for obligers. This kind of accountability. There's other aspects, I think, of Inform that suit it to other tendencies that are not. But for an upholder and a questioner, outer accountability doesn't matter that much. We don't need a lot of outer accountability because we have our inner expectations. But so for like a questioner, one of the things that is true about questioners, they love to customize. And they love for things to be efficient and rational. And so, like, one of the things that, like, my father's a questioner, and he lives in Kansas City. He's working out with a trainer now. And he loves talking about, why are we working out this way? Why is this muscle important? Why are you shifting the chair this way? Why are you repositioning my arms? And like the idea, I'm customizing it for you. These are your strengths. These are your weaknesses. These are your former injuries. This is like where you want to improve performance. It's customized. It's efficient. It's like the cutting edge research. And that is what is compelling to a questioner more than the accountability, because they can make themselves do anything they decide is what should be done. What they need is to really be convinced. They need to be convinced, this is what I should be doing. I trust your judgment. I trust your knowledge. And this is like the right thing for me right now. And so that's like a different message. And then for the rebel, rebels want to do things, like they often will do things in an unconventional way. Like, so if they quit smoking, they don't join a usual cessation program. They do it in some like bizarre way, or they do some unusual form of yoga. Mm-hmm. And so also thinking about that, I was thinking that about informed fitness that appeals to rebels is like, oh, everybody else is on the treadmill for 90 minutes and like they're pedaling away and doing the Stairmaster. And like, we know the secret way. We figured it out. Like, we're doing it this unconventional way. And everybody tells you have to do this. And we're telling you, no, you don't. You don't have to listen to all of them because we know the secret arcane way to fitness. And like, even your doctor doesn't even, your doctor's orders, they don't know what they're talking about. We figured it out. So that's a very kind of rebel. Or also rebels.
That's my kind of client.
Yeah. They can do anything they want to do. And I know, Mike, one of the things that you mentioned is fun for people when they start working out is like, they'll go skiing and they'll be like, oh my gosh, I'm skiing so much better. Like their performance is so affected. Well, a rebel might be like, well, I want to do it because I want to be stronger. I want to feel younger and more energetic. I want my skiing or my golf game or my tennis game to improve. That's what I want. I can do anything I want. I choose to do this because this is going to get me what I want. Mm-hmm. And so there's like, you can see though how different messages will resonate with people depending on what their tendency is.
So as an upholder, you probably don't.
I don't need any
question. You just tell me what to do and I'll do it.
Yeah. Well, one of the things I love about Inform as an upholder, I realize, is like one of the things that's very striking about this gym is there's nothing else to do. There's no like options of going on the treadmill or having a bike. There's nothing else that you can do. You come in, you work out with a trainer, you leave. Mm-hmm. And you can't opt to work out for 2 hours. It's like, you're going to do this and then you're out. Can you do it 3 days a week? No, we won't train you 3 days a week.
Right.
Like it's very much.
You don't get many choices.
Yeah. And so it's like, for me, it's very satisfying because it's like I come in, I do it, it's done. I have a feeling of like total fulfillment and like I've absolutely done everything that I can do. I've earned my gold star.
Check that box.
Check that box. It's done. And like, there's no lingering feeling of, should I be doing more or whatever? It's like, you've done the most that you can do.
For those members of our audience who might be hearing you for the first time, Gretchen, if you would, just give us a little history on what led you to your award-winning podcast. I saw you picked up an award at Podcast Movement in Chicago last year, and that had to be thrilling, and you've been doing this for just a couple of years. Just lead us into what led you to the podcast. Did you write your books first and figured that it'd be a good idea to support it with your podcast? Tell us about your journey with your podcast.
So I've been writing and talking to people about happiness and good habits for years. And then I had the opportunity to start a podcast. And I thought this would be great because, first of all, I've always wanted to collaborate with my sister, Elizabeth Kraft. She's a TV writer and producer living in LA. So I'm very far away from her. But she's one of the most important people in my life. And we've always wanted to collaborate together. So this seemed like a great opportunity. And it was a different way to connect with my audience. I wrote books. I have a daily blog. But this is the podcast is a very different medium. It's a very intimate medium because you're talking right into people's heads. It's conversational. And so one of the things I love about writing is you can get the words exactly right, but then you lose kind of the spontaneity and sort of the fun that comes from conversation. And it's been fantastic because we've engaged with a whole new group of people. And because I'm always trying to understand human nature better, that's great because I learn so much from our listeners who like get in touch all the time. And it's just been really, really fun to explore happiness and good habits and human nature. And to, every week hang out, over, in an audio way with my sister.
Yeah, you're spearheading a community.
Yeah, no, it's really fun. It's really fun.
Tell us about, how about a plug for Liz's new podcast coming up, which is a spinoff of yours, right?
Right. Yeah. So Elizabeth is starting a podcast called Happier in Hollywood, which she is co-hosting with her writing partner, Sarah Fain, who's her longtime writing partner and also one of her good friends from high school. So she's known her forever. And they are doing a podcast that's all about how to be happier in Hollywood, which is all about like the crazy show business, life. I have to say, I've heard the first couple episodes preview, and it is so great. They have some crazy stories, and it's interesting stuff, even if you're not a Hollywood person.
It's interesting, I can't help. I have all these habits and techniques in my head now after reading your book. And what you were just saying, what led to the podcast, you have a whole new audience. So in other words, there are some people that read your blog.
Yeah.
There might be some people that read your books. There's some people that listen to your podcast. They might not be doing all three.
Right.
Because some people, there are some tendencies to listen to podcasts. It's easier for people to listen to a podcast.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Some people, it's easier for them to read your blog.
Yeah.
So it's really interesting. So you're expanding your universe, and however they find you, they find you.
And I think that's really important because different media work for different people. And like you say, like a podcast you can listen to while you're walking your dog, and you can't read a book or watch a video. But then, if you want to mark something up, you want a written version. So it all you want to have it's good, I think, to have a lot of different forms of ways for people to connect, because then they can choose what works for them.
And more people nowadays. I love reading books, but sometimes I catch myself reading like 4 or 5 at a time and getting very slowly through some and very quickly through others, and just sometimes it's like just all right. Well, I got the podcast, so that's I just don't have time to to read another book or whatever. So it's the way it is.
You're doing dishes or you're driving, you can listen to a podcast.
Yeah, I never would have gotten through the biography of Alexander Hamilton without the audio. It never would have happened. And I had both. I had the book, I had the iPad, had the audio. And just,
there you go.
But literally, I probably did 75% of it in the car.
I tried audiobooks. I couldn't stand the voice. No matter whose voice it is, I didn't want to hear this person anymore.
Even if it was like Christopher Walken.
We live on audiobooks.
Yes. I mean, out here, I'm in the car all the time, and so I'm pleased to know that your books are also available on Audible, so I can now...
Did you narrate the books on Audible?
That's an interesting question, because I did the Happiness Project and Better Than Before, and I'm going in a month to do the Four Tendencies. I did not do Happier at Home because a friend of mine or actually an acquaintance who I later found out had a husband who's an actor, had argued in a group very persuasively that you really owed it to your listening audience to have a professional actor record your book, because they were the ones who could really read. And I believe, I was like, wow, she's right. And so thinking that was serving my audience better, I had somebody else do it, even though I like doing the audio. Mm-hmm. And boy, I have heard from so many people to the point where I'm almost thinking of asking if I could re-record the audio for Happier at Home, because people really do not like it.
Agreed.
If it's a first-person narrative and you're not reading it, they really, really feel like that is not what they want.
It's a disconnect.
It is a disconnect. And so I learned my lesson. And so from now on, I always do read the audio. Well, and it's fun. It's actually it's a kind of a cool. Like when I read one of my books, when I read Better Than Before, Jim Dale had just been there recording Harry Potter, and they were telling me about all the security measures that they had to put into place for dealing with the Harry Potter file. So it's fun. It's like a whole different world to be part of it. So I do record them now.
Thank you, Gretchen Rubin, for joining us here on the Inform Fitness Podcast. Hey, in the show notes, we will include a link to all of Gretchen's books in Audible, just like she mentioned, and of course to her website, GretchenRubin.com. There you can purchase hardback copies of all of her books, listen to her podcast, and even take the online quiz that we all took to discover which of the 4 tendencies rings true with you. Gretchen joins us again next week as we continue discussing the framework for the 4 tendencies. We'll also be chatting about managing 4 foundational habits that we all share. So make sure you join us for that. Also, we are winding down our month-long contest here in May of 2017. Remember, we want to reward all of you for listening to the Inform Fitness Podcast by offering a free training session at an Inform Fitness location nearest you. All you have to do is leave Inform Fitness a review on Yelp, Google, Facebook, Amazon, or iTunes. Screenshot that review and email it to podcast@informfitness.com to claim your free session and to qualify for the grand prize, which includes a personally autographed copy of Adam's book, Power of 10, The Once-a-Week Slow Motion Fitness Revolution. You'll also receive an Inform Fitness t-shirt, hat, and a hoodie jacket, and we'll top off the prize pack with a device to listen to all of the Inform Fitness podcasts, Amazon Music, audiobooks from Audible, and more using the Alexa voice service with your very own Amazon Echo. If you haven't seen the Amazon Echo yet, check out the link in the show notes for a full description and videos explaining what it does and how it works. Now, here are the rules. You can only receive one free training session for your reviews. However, you get an entry into the grand prize drawing for each review that you submit. For instance, if you leave us a review in, say, Yelp, iTunes, and Facebook, you still get one free training session overall, but 3 entries into the grand prize. So again, submit those reviews, screenshot it, and email them to podcast@informfitness.com. You must get those emails to us by 11:59 p.m. Eastern Time on Wednesday, May 31st, 2017, to qualify for the free session and the grand prize drawing. The winner will be announced on our Monday, June 5th episode right here on the Inform Fitness Podcast. All right, I'm done yapping until next week. Thanks so much for listening. And for Adam Zickerman, Sheila Melody, and Mike Rogers, I'm Tim Edwards with the Inbound Podcasting Network.